involved in producing the commodity. Okay. So factor price. This is what we mean by factor price. That also remains unchanged. Okay. And also the price of other related commodities. Okay. Other related commodities. What does that mean? Let me ask if you will understand that. Manish.
Yes, sir.
Were you present in the last class?
No, sir. I was absent, sir.
Okay, so probably you don't understand. Okay. Nikhil.
Yes, sir.
Were you present in the last class?
Yes, sir, I was present.
Okay, so tell me, when I say the price of other related commodities remain unchanged, so what does that mean? हाँ बताइए.
Yes, sir. जैसे सर हमने सर कार का एग्जांपल लिया था, तो अगर कार है और स्कूटर की प्राइसेस कम होने लगे, तो अपने आप लोग स्कूटर को ज्यादा प्रेफरेंस देने लगेंगे. तो सर वही है, अदर कमोडिटी मतलब उसी के कंपटीशन सेम फील्ड वाला कोई दूसरा कमोडिटी.
Yes. So that is what I mean by related. Though exactly, I don't think car and a scooter would be competing against each other, but maybe car and bike, okay, that might be competing against each other. Motorcycle, okay.
Yes, sir.
But not necessarily car and bike, but car and SUV might be competing against each other, okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So that is what we mean by other related commodities remain unchanged. Okay. So those are assumptions. Okay. And we know that in this such a dynamic market, okay, these things are these assumptions are not valid. Okay. Now, so then we talked about this equilibrium price, okay, where we said this intersection of supply and demand curve, okay, that is what determines that equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity as well, okay. So equilibrium quantity is on the this horizontal axis here, and the vertical axis here is your equilibrium price, okay? Equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, okay? And so this is that that price that consumers are willing to pay, okay, over a given period, okay. And that exactly equals that the quantity of that producer that is willing to supply. Now, if you have this price higher than the equilibrium price, the demand for that commodity drops, and so that results in when the demand drops, that results in surplus, right? And so this is what we discussed about this area of surplus, right? That price here that is higher, okay? Price is higher, and so the demand drops, okay? And therefore, what you have is surplus of that commodity, okay? And whereas if you have a price which is lower than the equilibrium price, okay, so what happens is the quantity which is in demand, okay, exceeds the quantity supplied, okay. More and more people are demanding that one, okay, and therefore a shortage of that commodity results, okay, shortage of the commodity, okay. So this is what we discussed about demand and supply curve. So let me draw another slide here. So once again, we have this supply curve and we have this demand curve, right? So there's a and this is, and the horizontal axis is, demand or demand plus supply in terms of how much. Okay, so that quantity. Okay, and here you have unit price maybe the vertical axis. Now, if you see, we had so many of those assumptions, okay? And so what happens when you have, changes in those assumptions? So what will happen? These curves will shift, and so which will result in some different equilibrium price and quantity. Okay. So let us say that the market demand curve. Okay. So this is the demand curve. Let me take up another color. Okay. So that demand curve is now shifted. Oh, sorry. Here. Okay. This is your new demand curve. Okay. New demand curve. So what has happened? Your commodities equilibrium price and quantity. So this is your new equilibrium price here, and this is your equilibrium quantity. Okay. So this is price, equilibrium price, and this is equilibrium quantity. Okay. So what you are seeing is, both are rising, right? Now, similarly, your market supply curve may also, shift if one of those assumptions change. Now, so this is where we start talking about elasticity of supply and demand. Now, this elasticity of supply basically, tells you, that if average percentage of change in the quantity of a commodity supplied because of an average change in its price. Okay, so if your average change in the so let's try to understand this one. Okay. elasticity of supply first and then elasticity of demand. Okay, so that is typically represented as epsilon S and epsilon D. Okay. So what is that epsilon S? That is the measurement of the average percentage change in the quantity of commodity supplied. Okay, so change in supplied quantity. Okay, because of an average percentage change in its price. Okay, so so this you have to divide it. And similarly, of course, you can do this, and divide by this as sum of quantities supplied. Quantities supplied, and here also sum of prices. Divided by 2 is for average. Okay, that is for average. So let us try to first do an example. Okay, and with that probably we will understand. So let's say at $30 per barrel price, okay, the demand is 6 million. Okay, that is what you have at $30, and let's say if price goes to 20 per barrel, the demand is 8. Okay, so let's say you have this, from that supply demand curve. Okay, you can do that. Okay, so what you have is that this supplied, this is for ES here, and you can do this for ED. Okay, instead of supplied quantity, you can write that as a demand. Okay, and so here what will be that change? 8 minus 6. Okay, change in demand divided by average is 8 plus 6 by 2, and then divide this with the price. Okay, price is here, earlier it was 30 minus 20 divided by 30 plus 20 divided by 2. Sorry. Okay, and so this is now you have 2 divided by 7, 10, 5, isn't it? Yeah, 55. Okay, and so this will be 2 divided by 7 divided by 4. So that comes out to be okay. So yeah. Now, so the term if is used here is if epsilon d is greater than 1, it's called elastic. Epsilon d is equal to 1, it's unitary elastic. You need to have my writing. That is called unitary elastic. And if it's less than 1, called inelastic. Okay, so what does that mean? This demand is less than 1. That means it's inelastic, and therefore what happens is the total revenue that the producer will decrease, the total revenue. Okay, total revenue because of this change in demand. Okay, this revenue will decrease, because what is happening is the percentage increase in quantity exceeds the percentage decline in price. Okay, you all understand that now. Percentage increase in quantity, you can see that percentage increase. Yeah, right. This percentage increase in quantity exceeds this percentage decline in price. Okay, and therefore you have this inelastic. So what happens with that is that the total revenue is ultimately going to decrease. Let me now use another slide. Okay, so hopefully you have understood this term demand and supply curve, then also elasticity in demand and supply. Okay, when it's going to be elastic, inelastic, or unitary elastic, and equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. All these terms probably you understood now. समझ में आया सबको? गोपाल?
Yes, sir.
तो समझ में आ रहा है?
हाँ, sir.
Okay, good. So now what we'll talk about is yet another term, what is called inflation. heard this term inflation? इन्फ्लेशन सुना है? अंशुल,
यस सर।
इन्फ्लेशन
सर इन्फ्लेशन सर वो होता है जब सर वो किसी चीज का जो दाम है वो बढ़ते जाता है ईयर्स बाय ईयर्स, ऐसा शायद।
ओके।
पक्का नहीं मालूम
और ये क्यों होता है?
सर। सर इतना आइडिया नहीं है सर ये।
So yes, that is what you kind of heard about, that inflation. And in general, when we say inflation, what we about is the price increase, right?
यस सर।
है कि नहीं?
यस सर।
ठीक है, let me okay, Chandrahas, उसका आवाज नहीं सुनाई दे रहा। Chandrahas, तुम्हारा आवाज नहीं आ रहा था। Let me unmute you again. Can you hear me? But I cannot hear you. Okay. Let me go to somebody else. अमरदीप।
यस सर।
हाँ, इन्फ्लेशन का मतलब क्या होता है?
Sir, with time, price of commodity increases and the value of our currency decreases. इसको inflation.
The value of your currency decreases. ये अभी नहीं। Value of currency जो है decrease करेगा अभी नहीं, इतना जल्दी नहीं, okay? इतना जल्दी नहीं। इसीलिए जितना जल्दी पैसा खर्च कर दो, हाँ, है कि नहीं?
नहीं सर, मतलब
ठीक है। Let me try to Aditya, ये भी पता नहीं कहाँ है। आशीष।
Yes, sir.
हाँ, so what do you understand from this word inflation?
Sir, yes, sir. Basically हम कह सकते हैं कि जो मनी की जो वैल्यू है उसको बताने का है कि इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ेगा।
मनी का वैल्यू ऑफ मनी अभी इतना जल्दी नहीं आ।
तो वैल्यू ऑफ मनी तो
नहीं
फिर रेपो रेट से कर सकते हैं कि इसको मेंटेन।
अरे पावर अभी रेपो रेट पर अभी तुरंत इतना जल्दी अभी हम लोग जाएंगे ना, बहुत तेजी से भाग रहे हो।
मतलब कंपैरिजन है कमोडिटी और मनी के बीच में।
अरे बाबा रुको, अभी हम लोग जो है let us try to understand that, huh? See, inflation generally, means that, there is an increase in general price level. Okay. General price. Ayush.
Yes, sir.
When we say echo कर रहा है. Let me. Ayush Srivastava.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I say, inflation typically occurs, when there is a general increase in price level.
Yes, sir.
So does that mean that prices of everything are increasing?
So basically, for the increasing price, basically, if the demand of some commodity increases, like at a large scale, so that will definitely lead to inflation. What I believe, because uh, it will definitely that demand increasing demand would raise the price of that commodity.
नहीं इतना ओके तो ठीक है अभी हम लोग इसको समझने की कोशिश करेंगे ओके सी inflation as I said and you also are saying that there is a increase in price level but that does not necessarily mean okay that for every commodity okay you have price increase ये ऐसा नहीं है okay even when you have a very high inflation even during that time you will have for some goods okay prices you will see that they have been falling okay so now you must be thinking then how do you determine this inflation right so what government does typically is they will have various commodities and based on their how their prices are increasing okay based on that they kind of determine what the inflation is now when there is inflation what happens is that affects your real income and wealth okay and when you were saying that with inflation value of money decreases okay that's fine but then at the same time what happens is government also tries to increase that interest rate okay to so that see the thing is what happens is let's say you have only 10 rupees today okay and if you let's say buy one commodity let's say you have 10 rupees today sorry okay and you purchase let's say 2 units of something 2 units of A today okay now this rupees 10 okay maybe later let's say 5 years down the line okay let's say after 5 years you may be only able to purchase just 1 unit of this of A 1 unit of A because the value of it has decreased but if you have only kept this as a static okay but if you so this is what you do is you also let's say you put this in a bank okay rupees 10 in a bank and then if bank gives you some interest on it and if the value if that becomes 10 to 20 okay if that rupees if that 10 becomes 20 is still after 5 years you'd be able to get 2 units. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that that inflation has been countered by that interest rate, right? क्योंकि जो तुम्हारा वैल्यू था, जो पहले जो 10 था वो अब 20 हो गया. Okay, अब जो 20 rupees मिल रहा है with that interest rate. Okay, so you have been able to counter that inflation by interest rate. तो ये भी है. Now, so basically what inflation is doing is inflation is reducing the purchasing power of 1 unit of money over time. Okay, so this is what it reduces. It reduces so already लोग लिख रहे हैं इसमें पता नहीं क्या है. Increase in demand result in standard of living, बहुत चीजें हो गई हैं. Reduces purchasing power. Okay. Of unit of money, whatever money you have. Okay, maybe rupees or dollar or whatever. Okay, purchasing power of a unit of money over time. That is what it does. Now let me ask you this. अभी तो अब इन्फ्लेशन का थोड़ा बहुत और कॉन्सेप्ट समझ लिया जाए. Mohammad Sami,
Yes, sir.
is inflation good thing or bad thing?
Sir, good thing तो नहीं होगा था.
Good thing नहीं होगा.
सर, परचेजिंग पावर कम होना. सर
नहीं तो उसके लिए तो इंटरेस्ट रेट तो है ना, तो उसको बैलेंस किया जाता है.
यस सर. सर डिपेंड करेगा सर.
क्या पे डिपेंड करेगा? Who wants to tell if inflation is a good thing or a bad thing? कोई बात नहीं करना चाहता है. Let me ask Gaurav. Gaurav Sukharia. पता नहीं कहाँ है. Dipanshu.
हाँ, yes, sir.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
सर मतलब जो इन्फ्लेशन होता है वो ऐसे भी यूज कर सकते हैं. द गवर्नमेंट यूजेस इन्फ्लेशन टू ड्राइव द इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ. इफ यू इंक्रीज द प्राइसेस.
उतना कहाँ जा रहे हो? इन्फ्लेशन क्यों यूज कर रहा है क्या?
तो फिर सर वही तो मतलब एडवांटेज भी हो जाए इसका थोड़ा सा.
क्या है एडवांटेज?
कि इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को इंक्रीज करने के लिए भी यूज कर सकते हैं हम. बूस्ट इकोनॉमिक के लिए ज्यादा परचेजिंग पावर ज्यादा होगी, ज्यादा मतलब ज्यादा पैसे स्पेंड करेगी अगर जनता हमारे देश की, तो इकोनॉमी बढ़ेगी उससे. इसलिए इन्फ्लेशन को भी ऐसे भी यूज कर सकते हैं.
नहीं. देखो इन्फ्लेशन जो होता है in a sense, the sense that it gives you is like price of a commodity is increasing. Okay, इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि मान लो कि अगर तुम सप्लायर हो किसी चीज का, कोई अगर तुम यूनिट कोई कमोडिटी प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो, ठीक है. Now, if you are producing and if its price is not increasing, ठीक है, तो वो जो तुम्हें सेंस मिलेगा कि ओ इसका तो प्राइस बढ़ ही नहीं रहा है, तुम्हारा लगेगा कि हमारा इनकम जो है कांस्टेंट है। ओके, सो वो तुम्हें जो है वो जो एक ड्राइव होता है वो नहीं देता है। हाँ? ये क्यों प्रोड्यूस करना जबकि इसका प्राइस वही कांस्टेंट रह गया है। ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम उसका कोई प्राइस बढ़ ही नहीं रहा है, तो तुम्हें लगेगा कि मेरा तो कुछ इनकम हो ही नहीं रहा है, मेरा तो वही है। तो वो जो है वो सेंस जो है नहीं देता है। ठीक है, तो इसलिए जो है इन्फ्लेशन जो है इट्स अ गुड थिंग, बट हाउ मच इन्फ्लेशन शुड बी, that's the big question. If you have a very high inflation, तो वेरी हाई इन्फ्लेशन में क्या होता है कि वो जो तुम्हारा वैल्यू ऑफ मनी जो है वो बहुत फास्ट डिक्रीज करता है। तो इसीलिए जो एक मॉडरेट इन्फ्लेशन, ओके, मॉडरेट इन्फ्लेशन is a good thing. Okay, typically, okay, maybe 2%, 3% inflation is a good thing. Okay, क्योंकि वो तुम्हें एक सेंस देता है कि yes, the commodity that you are producing, okay, उसका प्राइस हमें over a period of time it's increase. तो ये एक जरूरी चीज है। Now, so what are the main causes? What are the main causes of inflation? तो इसमें जो है one is demand pull inflation. Okay? तो ये क्या है? When there is an increase in aggregate demand, okay, and that aggregate demand grows at a faster rate than aggregate supply. Okay, aggregate demand grows at a faster rate than the aggregate supply. Now, then there is a cost push inflation. So as you can see that it is coming from the supply or the cost side, okay, of the market. It may be due to, let's say, let's say you have labor unions, okay, or business firms or supplier of raw materials, business firms or supplier of raw material. Now, see, these, as you can sense it, that because of these situations, okay, you may see that let's say, labor unions demand for the, increase in cost of your labor, okay, manpower cost increase. So in that case, what you will find is that there is a cost push, or let's say if you have big firms which are responsible for raw material supply, okay. So in that case, you will find that there is a, inflation because of cost of these raw materials. Or many times, also you will find that cost push could be due to, let's say, government regulation, or taxes. Okay? Now, let's say if government decides to increase the tax, okay? So what you will find that cost of that commodity increases, and so that increases inflation quite a bit. Can you give some example of this one, cost push inflation, that you have experienced? Let me. Amir?
Yes, sir.
Can you give any example of this cost push inflation?
Sir, I think there are quite a few regulation or like tax. Government imposes taxes on several commodities, including crude, from private funds. And like we have seen, even now there is a concept of carbon tax. Such policies being becoming more and more popular because of this cost push inflation, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, so different types of tax, you always see that, government imposes. Particularly what I see is a lot of, taxes on crude oil. See, still we do not have this crude oil, this petrol and diesel under GST. It is not, okay? There are still, several types of taxes that is levied on petrol and diesel, and therefore you see that more than 50% of it goes to government. And there are several reasons for that, which perhaps want to later on. किसी ने कुछ और लिखा है, increase in oil price leading to increase in other commodity. Yes, yes, it does. उसके बाद एक ने लिखा increase in prices of petrol after BJP government. Well, that part I'm not sure whether it's a BJP government or it's any government. Those things always become political thing, but anyhow. उसके बाद एक ने लिखा 1970s oil price rise. Yes, yes, those things definitely after BS6 regulations the prices of cars are increasing. Yes, yes, definitely. Yes, so you can see, and particularly oil and gas being kind of raw material, right, for many things. It has huge impact on economy in terms of inflation, because so many things are linked that if crude price goes up, you see prices of almost everything, okay, rising because of this price increase in oil and gas price. ओके तो ये जो है इसको बोलते हैं कॉस्ट पुश इन्फ्लेशन। एक तो डिमांड पुल इन्फ्लेशन था और दूसरा है कॉस्ट पुश। नाउ एक और भी चीज है उसको समझ लो कि the economy will suffer from cost push inflation if there is a simultaneous increase in inflation and unemployment. Okay, unemployment भी अगर बढ़ रहा होता है और साथ में इन्फ्लेशन भी बढ़ता है, ओके, तो ये बहुत ही डेंजरस सिचुएशन होने लगता है। एंड that is what is called, this term is given, it's called stagflation. Stagflation, okay? क्योंकि supply is driven because it's giving you that sense that the prices will increase, okay? And as I said in the beginning about that, when cost increases or price increases, then supplier tend to produce more, है कि नहीं? अभी हम लोगों ने supply का भी पढ़ा, so they tend to supply more, and when they do that, what you see is there is no buyer of it, okay, क्योंकि तुम्हारा unemployment बढ़ा हुआ है, okay, so this is what happens, and ऐसे situation में what happens is when price increases, ठीक है, well, when you have supplied more and more in the market, and there is nobody to buy, so what happens is now the supplier will try to reduce its cost, unitary cost, by reducing its the very first thing that they do is they reduce their workforce, okay? ये होता है जब भी इन्फ्लेशन होता, जब भी जो है तुम्हारा उनको कॉस्ट रिडक्शन की बात आती है, जब भी कॉस्ट रिड्यूस करने की बात आती है, so that is the very first thing that they do is they reduce their manpower, okay, workforce. So when workforce they try to reduce, तो unemployment और बढ़ता है, और unemployment जब बढ़ता है तो ये बहुत ही dangerous situation है, okay? As you can see that increase in inflation and also at the same time unemployment, okay, ये पूरे इकोनॉमी के लिए जो है it's very dangerous, and therefore government tries to contain these things with different monetary policy, okay? तो ये गवर्नमेंट का काम होता है, तो उसको कैसे हम लोग टैकल करें। तो अभी जैसे कि एक ने कहा कि 1970s में जो ऑयल प्राइस हुआ था, so actually that had that cost push inflation where, because of this rapid increase in price, उस समय जो था ना वो जो OPEC countries थे, okay, OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, ये सभी टर्म याद करना, हाँ, all these abbreviations. तो इनका जो है मार्केट पर बहुत ही होल्ड था, and they could increase those prices, और इसके चलते जो है there's a lot of economical problem worldwide. Okay, तो एक थोड़ा सा तो ओवरव्यू तुम लोग को मिल गया है. अभी और भी इन्फ्लेशन के प्रॉब्लम्स जो हैं we will look at that structural अभी कॉल बैक कर रहा हूं. तो ये चीजें जो है, ठीक है. All right. Anybody is having any question? जो कि हो सकता है कि next time discuss हम लोग करें. Next time मतलब tomorrow. दीपांशु,
सर.
कुछ क्वेश्चन है?
नहीं.
नहीं, समझ में आया जो मैंने बताया अभी तक? थोड़ा बहुत
हाँ सर, समझ तो आया.
समझ में आया?
हाँ आया सर.
ओके. चालू?
Yes, sir. Hello.
बैकग्राउंड में नॉइज है, हैं?
Oh, sir. Room.
So much of noise. यशदीप,
Yes, sir.
कुछ समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
तो कोई क्वेश्चन है अभी?
नहीं sir.
कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है. So whatever I have taught so far, okay, just think through it, okay, and we'll again discuss these things to some extent tomorrow as well. Inflation के बारे में जो है tomorrow we'll discuss, and then उसके बाद जो है we'll talk about uncertainty and risk, हाँ? और उसके बाद time value of money and all these things. ठीक है. So inflation पे हम लोग बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं देंगे. कल जो है we'll try to finish all these, हाँ? और uncertainty and risk. ठीक है. So I stop here, and hopefully you have marked your attendance now. ठीक है. Bye.
हाँ सतीश,
हाँ संजय जी.
ये बताइए आपका वो अप्रेजल फॉर्म नहीं दिए क्या?
अरे भाई अभी तक शायद नहीं दिए हैं. शायद क्या नहीं दिए हैं? हैं? नहीं दिए अभी.
अरे जमा करिए.
अच्छा, मैं इस वीक में जमा कर दूंगा.
इस वीक नहीं, आज ही जमा करिए, डायरेक्टर पूछ रहे हैं.
ए भगवान,
सभी क्या चुका है, सिर्फ आप ही की पेंडिंग.
माय गॉड. मैं कल तक कर दूंगा. ठीक है. क्योंकि जो है ना अभी क्लास 1 हुआ, फिर 4:15 से एक और क्लास होगा, 4:15 से 5:05 तक. ठीक है, तो मैं कर दूंगा.